Welcome to No Direction, the Pathfinder News, Reviews, and Interviews podcast. I'm Ryan Costello.
And I'm Jefferson J. Thacker, also known as Parent.
Normally we like to keep things chained around here. It's just kind of our policy that when things can be changed, chain them. Param, would you agree?
That works for my wallet.
Well, not today. Today we are throwing off all the chains. We are going Pathfinder Unchained. And we've got one of Pathfinder's designers, Stephen Radney-MacFarland, here to talk to us about the latest hardcover for the Pathfinder role-playing game line, Pathfinder Unchained. How are you doing, Stephen?
Good, good. Glad to be here.
We're glad to have you. How do you feel about chains?
Oh, I don't like them personally. I mean, you know, they have their time and place, but that's usually a mixed company. So, yeah, as a person who designs for a living, and mostly how chaining, you know, we're well into the rule cycle and with expansions for Pathfinder. There's a lot of things that we all kind of go, I guess I wish we could change that, but we can't without disrupting the game. Pathfinder Unchained gave us a way to do that at least a little bit while trying to solve some issues that people have pointed out in the game or subsystems that people would like to have in the game, and then sometimes just, you know, neat stuff that we found interesting or fun or cool and could throw out and people could try it in their own game. So that's what taking off the chains was all about.
So you could almost call this Pathfinder a working vacation for the designers.
I don't know if I'd call it a working vacation. It was one of those books we were very excited about, but the development of it was, of course, challenging. And it was challenging because, you know, Pathfinder is a robust and fairly complex game, and trying to come up with subsystems that you could port in modularly sometimes was one of our greatest challenges.
So then why make Pathfinder Unchained now? Why not pool all of that knowledge and start working on Pathfinder 2.0?
Oh, Paul. One, people are really enjoying our game, and like we've always said, we're not even going to think about another edition until, you know, people really sit there and want it or need it. But that being said, sometimes we like to try out new things, and you know, going through the frequently asked questions and the errata and seeing what people like and they don't like, or seeing the complaints that marshals are terrible and rogues are the worst class in the game. You know, we read all of that, and sometimes we disagree with it, and sometimes we agree with it and go, you know, yeah, if we could do this today, we could make it a lot better. And then Pathfinder Unchained gave us a chance to do that, to take a second look at, you know, the summoner and make more robust options for the monk, and, you know, so people who actually want to play that kind of combatant have a better time doing it. So because we're not producing a second edition, and we wanted to fix some things that were in our game and give people options, I guess that's the answer to that question.
Right. I mean,
Go, Pam.
I mean, it's a little bit of an unfair question, but that was the question that keeps getting asked about this book, because I think that there's a fundamental misunderstanding or just a million different thoughts about what this book is or could be. I don't think I've seen people argue more about any Pathfinder book that hasn't come out yet besides this one.
Wow, that's kind of funny, because really it's just a book of new toys for you guys to play with. That's, you know, a little bit out of the ordinary. A lot of times we have to, you know, think about, okay, how does this affect Pathfinder society? Are they going? Is this something that they're just going to ban because it doesn't work in that play format? Or how does it work with, you know, the wizard spells we already have? How to crack a nut like occult, and, you know, when so much of the game is occult anyway. You know, creating a good and fun book that has a different feel and vibe. And so in a lot of ways, this just allowed us to play in sandboxes for a bit. So if anybody's looking for the reason of this book, it's, yeah, we did kind of want to play a little bit and see what our brains would come up with mid-cycle about things that could enhance other people's games.
And what's the difference between a modular toy and a patch?
Well, it depends on whether or not you think the system needs patched or not. you know, the truth is there are people out there who are playing the core rulebook rogue and having a great time. There is an aspect of the community that I think is a little bit more competitive when it comes to like dealing damage and getting special abilities and everything else, and they look at the rogue and see it lacking. It's basically one of those things where if you're playing a rogue using the core rulebook, that's a perfectly fine character. You're going to have a great time. If you're one of those people who have lamented that either rogues were seemed a little substandard from the beginning, or even more so with other roguelike classes coming out, we've given you a little bit of an uptick. You know, we've been able to go back and take a look at some of the abilities the rogue had and allow it to play that niche in those games a lot better. You know, we did a similar thing with the Eidolon. Is that buffet of options was a great way to put together a pet class where a person could have a pet that they absolutely could dream up whatever, and that was the goal of it. But the more we went down the line of what we wanted the Eidolon to do, not only in the game and in the world, we wanted it to be a little bit more tighter focus. We would have been much happier in the long run, I think, with the Eidolon sort of selection you see in this book, the thing that you're actually bringing forth an outsider that's a lot like the outsiders in the rest of the world and everything. So if you're happy with the old summoner and it scratches that itch, that's great. But you might want to take a look at the new summoner. I think it's a lot more flavorful and does some things that were probably tones down some of the high-end combat you see in some Eidolon builds.
So I know people definitely want to hear about the classes and how they're changed, but I just want to invite anyone that is watching us live. First of all, hello. If you have any questions, you're watching us live on YouTube, just post them in the comment section. We call that our chat. And Param and I will periodically be taking questions from the audience, posing them to Stephen. But Stephen, let's talk about the summoner. That's the one that you were just bringing up.
Mm-hmm.
How has it changed? How have you limited the options that made the core summoner, the regular summoner, a little overpowered?
Well, basically, you pick an Eidolon subtype, and those port over from the various outsiders that are in the Pathfinder universe. And there's some heavy hitters in there and everything else, but it's more about the tone of the Eidolon that you want to make. And we've tried to have a better balance in some of the evolutions and some of the choices that you get. So you don't get these crazy reach monster builds that a lot of people like, because they exude a lot of battlefield control and can deal a lot of damage, and you can send your summoner out and take out rooms and lower level things and stuff like that. Don't get me wrong, I understand the appeal of that kind of play. But we wanted something that was a little bit more constrained, especially for groups that complain that their their Eidolon. Well, there's the Eidolon, and then there's the idler behind him, and in the way that some people play the summoner. We're just kind of ruining the fun of their experience, and it wasn't just on a rules level or this guy's just a monster. There was a definite flavor aspect as well, where people just looked at the Eidolon and just, I don't even know how to imagine this thing. And so we put a little bit more balanced subtypes in, and a little bit of things to help people's imagination out a little bit as well, and give these critters a place in the world, or the multiverse, I should say.
Yeah, I really liked when I was in Dave Gross's novel King of Chaos. He has a couple of summoners in there, and I liked how he represented it. They were almost like Princess Mononoke, or these giant animal spirits, and that was really cool. But when I get into society, I see like 100 tentacle beasts and with 4 heads and 18 legs that can wear armor and talk 13 languages, and I'm like, where did that come from, and why isn't anybody seeing it running away as fast as they can?
Yeah, well, when Dave writes a novel, he's definitely trying to build up a scene with interesting characters. When people play in Pathfinder Society, they're trying to make sure, 1, their character doesn't die, and 2, they get as much XP as possible. So, that's the leap that you see, and I'm sure there are people with those tentacled beasts who have backstories and names and reasons why they're like that, and those people are awesome. And some people just play it because it's a monster on the grid, and they can do crazy things with it, and it makes them giggle and laugh, and hey, that's valid. I'm totally fine with that. I understand that.
Now, did you imply that the Unchained Summoner wouldn't be the summoner standing back while the Eidolon does all the work?
Well, I don't know if I can totally claim that. We definitely tried to give you a little bit more reason to use your summoner other than just an Eidolon creation machine. But it's a pet class with a very dominant pet. So I think you're still going to see some summoners come back and people having a great time playing this demon Eidolon and wrecking the battlefield and whatnot. So I would like to think you'll see less of that, but a lot of that depends on playstyle of the person playing the summoner.
Yeah, as Pathfinder gets older as a game, so too do people who grew up with Pokemon. Like, they're going to start being your core fan base, and I think people still expect that Ash Pikachu dynamic in the class.
Oh yeah, no, and it's definitely there. It's just a little bit more focused. So I don't think anybody who won't find a flavor of Eidolon in the new summoner that they don't like and don't feel like they could play. But I think a lot of people, as long as their GMs let them, are going to play the old summoner and build those monster Eidolons that they can with that system.
Now, the other one that we've talked about a lot already is the Rogue. It's gotten a lot of attention, a lot of discussion about it, and of course, it's like you said earlier, it has gotten the reputation in some circles as the weakest class in the core rule book, especially after the monk got buffed in Ultimate Combat. So, what's up with the Rogue? How is it different? What problems did it have that you're trying to look at differently this time?
So the Rogue and in many ways the Barbarian had a set of one problems where we had some rogue talents that that were designed earlier in the game when we were being a little bit more careful, and we were allowed to kind of go back and take a look at the rogue talents and sit there and ask if they were up to snuff, if they were upkeeping. And then the other thing is, changing danger sense seems to be a very small thing, but it's also one of those things that's very helpful. And the debilitating injury mechanic, where not only are you playing a rogue that every once in a while, or whenever they get it set up, and they always try to get it set up, will deal a lot of damage, but can do sort of some roguish control against their enemies as well, and sort of really build up that idea of the sneak attack. This is something you weren't expecting. It's just not some dice of damage. Like later on, this will do things that you have to deal with or pay the consequences. And so in a lot of ways, it was just we'd heard the complaints, we agreed with some and didn't agree with others, and we wanted to give it a little bit more oomph in a place where it made sense to do it. And those are the main reasons why we ended up changing the Rogue. I think people will enjoy playing it just as much as they like playing the old Rogue, and some other people like it even more. Who knows, we might still make it complaints it's the weakest class for whatever reason.
Well, this is the only one of the 4 cornerstone classes of Fighter, Cleric, Wizard, Rogue, the only one of those 4 that made it into the Unchained treatment. So was there particular pressure to get the Rogue, I don't want to say right, but to have it up to as many people's standards as possible?
I think any pressure that was there, we would put that on ourselves. We took a look at a lot of classes and asked which one should get treatment, and we really didn't divide it by the main classes versus the not main, the later classes, or the original 4 versus whatever. But the Rogue has always been kind of even when it was the Thief back in earlier iterations of the game that would become Pathfinder. it's always been kind of in a weird space. It's always been kind of a finesse sort of thing. It's always been seen as a little weaker, right? The old experience points. You gain levels faster as a rogue because you didn't throw around big damage and you didn't cast spells, and you had a group of side tricks that sometimes didn't help you out that much in combat or at all. So I think the rogue has traditionally been tricky, and we wanted to see if we could get at least a little closer to the level it should be after so many years of development of the game.
It's funny you mentioned the low XP track, because back in the old 2E days, we used to joke around that the rogue took less XP because you're always rolling new ones.
Yeah, that was definitely a problem with 2E. Nobody played a rogue, or very few people played a rogue. Of course, we want all of our classes being played. We want them all to have a niche. And it's not that we didn't see people playing the rogue. People were playing the rogue just fine. It was just, Unchained is our opportunity to do, just a little better, and put it out there. In some ways, some days, I think the whole design team would be happy. Could we just sort of rewrite some of the classes, and see what that looked like, give an Unchained treatment to the whole thing. But of course, that's a huge endeavor, and so we went for the quote-unquote problem children, the things that we got a lot of comments on, or people talk to us about, or we just found out in play that they were a little sub-satisfying. I mean, I used to hate to play monks. Now I'm playing one of the new Unchained monks and having a blast. It finally does what I want a monk to do in adventures.
Okay. So when we're channeling our inner butt kicker, so tell us about the monk.
All right, so the monk, talk about a controversial class all through the history. Basically, it's full attack bonus. We cleaned up the flurry of blows things a little bit to make it not have as much sort of weird language and people trying to figure out how to work it. And then later on, and this actually came later in the development process, is I was talking to Jason about an early iteration where Flurry of Blows got more complicated as it got older, and I'm like, this is what I really want to do, right? I want to be able to like headbutt somebody or do something like that. Is there a way we can accomplish that? And Jason went in his office and thought about it for about 15 minutes and came back with his idea on how to fix that, and it was perfect. Absolutely, yeah, do that, and then Jason would spill out some of the ideas, and we'd kick them around. And by the time we were done, I'm like, all right, yeah. Strangely enough, bards and monks are the two classes I don't play personally, but I've got to try this monk. And I'm only in the lower levels now, and I'm still feeling pretty satisfied with it. I haven't even gotten to the cool key stuff I can do, and some of these headbutts and push arounds and hammer blow and all of that stuff, which I'm so looking forward to doing because I just think that sounds like great fun.
I just have to pause and bring some attention to something that happened in chat. Nay Sphinx, which I believe is Robert Brooks, has rewritten Uptown Funk as Unchained Monk. He's got the entire song there.
Oh my gosh.
There's mentions of Jason Bullman. Jason Bullman sent you a hallelujah. Woo. Yeah, everyone I encourage to go back, find this episode on YouTube, and just marvel at this contribution to the conversation.
Oh God! With his permission, that is going in the show notes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that Robert Brooks is okay. At first, I didn't know, and we were friends on Facebook, and every time I'd see his stuff, I'd be all like, God, that guy looks like a tool. No, Robert's fantastic, and he's been doing some great work for me. He's a great guy and a really good designer.
Well, if you ever do a book of bard songs, boom, Robert Brooks.
Yeah, there we go.
Call him. Sorry, Parent, I cut you off.
I am never doing a book of bard songs.
No, this was something that one of the archetypes already addressed, but you mentioned the key being a focus of the new monk. Does the new Unchained monk eventually have the option to shoot fireballs?
Yes. Sort of. Yeah. No. You can use elemental burst, and it's a gout of energy. I mean, how you want to describe that gout is up to you. So yeah, the new key abilities, you can do a lot of crazy stuff. I mean, so I was reading Playing at the World, which is a fantastic book about the early days of wargaming and chainmail and D&D, and it was talking about how the monk has always been that class that people either just love or hate. They either want it in their campaign because they want this crazy kung fu guy, or they think it's dumb because they want to create a medieval fantasy. We totally went for the kung fu, and it's not even like the kung fu of the 1970s and 80s. We really wanted to update it, so if you wanted to play the total kung fu guy, the monk wasn't only kind of halfway there, and you would archetype in the rest. It was all the way there.
Now, suppose I wanted to play a monk with like a vow of silence and a wolf animal companion. What are my options?
I guess then you're going to have to multi-class a little bit and just keep your mouth shut.
Well, there's the feat from Fates of Balance to get your animal companion, right?
True.
Yeah, that's true.
Stephen, you should have known that.
No. Oh my God, our game is so complicated now.
Sorry. One of my issues with the way the monk played was always it felt like you had to be 4th level before you actually got all your monk stuff.
Yeah.
Like it's one of the last classes to get all its fundamental stuff. Is that true of the Unchained monk?
No, I don't think it is. Like I said, I think my monk's 3rd level now, so I'm on the lip to getting all the cool stuff. But I mean, I kick a lot of butt in battle, more butt than I thought I would. Because I've actually tried playing a monk in every single edition and just went away and I'm never playing that again. Just because you run up to something, you hit twice, or you attack twice, or 3 times, or whatever, and not a lot of them hit, and you do an amount of damage that seems kind of sucky, and you just don't feel like you're the cool martial arts or kung fu guy. This one, yeah, I just go around, I punch things, and they go down, or I'll take out my temple sword if they're particularly rough, and I do, I'm not neck and neck with probably the fighter or something like that, but close enough where I don't feel like I'm not having fun.
Now, do you still feel like it felt like after Ultimate Combat came out, that the monk, a lot of the issues with the monk kind of got fixed and it came into its own? Is that still, you still weren't satisfied even after Ultimate Combat?
Well, the issue with Ultimate Combat, strangely enough, and I don't know if this kind of fix it, but you get people who will buy and read and play everything we make, but people still come to their first game and they go, oh, I want to play the Kung Fu guy, and in a lot of ways this is hoping that if the person at the table has a core rule book, goes, oh, you can play this and you might have a pretty good time, or you can play the Unchained monk and do a lot more of what you want to do. So yeah, we were able to fix a lot of the things that people were complaining about with the monk in Ultimate Combat, but we really wanted to go back to this. Is, I think in a lot of ways, this is the class that we really wanted to go back and rethink from the ground up.
Now, is this the class that needed the most ground up thinking? Then not the one that needed the most, but is this one that had the most transformation?
It's really hard to say, and a case could be made that the Summoner has had the most transformation, but all of that transformation was done within a certain scope. I think we spent more time thinking about the monk than the other classes when it came to what we wanted to do. And even after we got a draft out and I'd play it for a bit, or somebody else would come back with stuff, it was the class that took a little bit more work to make sure it was the one that we really wanted out there.
Now, despite my need for order, I decided to talk about these classes in reverse alphabetical order, because the last class is actually the one that I think most people were surprised was included in there, and that's the Barbarian. Why did Barbarian need to be Unchained?
The Barbarian probably had the least amount of problems. I mean, you know, it's the Barbarian. You go into a rage, you beat the crap out of stuff. Nobody was really having an issue with you know, its damage or its play. But again, we wanted to go back and simplify things like rage and rage powers. And we went through a lot of hypotheticals about how we could simplify rage from the kind of middle ground we went here to, well, maybe we shouldn't touch it at all, to other crazy ideas like every time you attacked, you rolled twice and took the best one, and that's what rage was. And we made it so it's much more middle. You don't have to change so much on your character sheet. You gain these bonuses, but it doesn't meddle right with the ability scores, which makes you have to do all sorts of mental math, and then you forget, you know, this modifier over here or whatnot. We wanted to give you a list of this is what you change. And then the rage powers had the same problem that I think some of the rogue talents did, is they were designed very early on in the game, and some of them were not up to snuff. You know, instead of giving you a bonus on something, we just gave you the thing instead. And stuff like that, just to make it more fun and more Barbarian-like to play.
I know Jason was ranting about Ferocious Swimmer at PaizoCon last year.
Yeah. So it's one of those things where, you know, back early on when you know, Paizo was designing the game, these were all new additions to these classes. These were things that were blatant power-ups compared to 3.5. And so I think that they were a little careful about what they gave out, because, you know, you tend to be a little careful when you're just doing sort of blatant power-ups, you know, to create a new class that has more engaging things to play. After a few years, we can kind of take a look at play and see what people are taking, what they're excited about, what they're not excited about, and take a second shot at it.
Now, since we're talking about the Barbarian, that does also lead me to a different thought. Is at my table, and I imagine a lot of tables, but one of my players is one of my newer players, still getting adjusted to the game, and he's playing a Blood Rager. And of course, that has all the same problems that the Barbarian has because of the rage mechanic. So that sort of directly and indirectly, how do these new classes play well with the stuff for their parent classes?
So I would say if it's easy enough to sort of take the Unchained Barbarian's lead with the Blood Rager, and so in a lot of ways you can go down that route. I think if we ended up finishing this Barbarian first, it would have that design would have ported over into the Blood Rager. But you know, we just got done that book. We're like, oh, let's take a look at the Barbarian, and then of course when, you know, we're examining that, we come up with all these great ideas, and there was a little bit of, oh, this could have really worked in the Blood Rager too, and we could have, you know, killed two birds with one stone. I would say that if you like the way that the Unchained Barbarian works and it makes sense to you in the way that we hope it does, yeah, kind of use that tech and just port it over to the Blood Rager too in your home campaign, and you'll be happy.
It should work just fine. Along similar lines, Chris Kimball asked on Facebook, will old archetypes work with the redesigned classes?
A lot of the old archetypes will work. We tried to make it so things tended to hit on the same levels or around the same levels, so we didn't invalidate many archetypes. Mileage will, of course, vary.
Okay, and he says, if not, will there be support for the updated classes, such as with new archetypes?
You know, that's a really good question. I can tell you that that won't be the case in Occult Adventures, although, you know, it only touches on these classes here and there, sort of, kind of. But if you're asking if we're going to come out with a whole, like a book that's even devoted partially to Unchained archetypes, that is not on the schedule. It's an idea, but yeah. So probably not right now or anytime soon, but who knows? How's that for an answer?
It's honest. How about that?
Yeah.
Now the classes, they definitely got a lot of the spotlight of attention about this because classes always get attention because that's what the players are playing with. But this is by no means the only thing in this book. It would be a very short book.
That's very true. It would be a very short book, and maybe a little cheaper, but not much.
So what else is in this book? What else are we looking forward to?
So one of the things that I brainstormed in the beginning, and I'm actually kind of excited about, is there is a new simple monster creation array, and the idea behind that is anybody who's made monsters for Pathfinder, and if you want to really do it right, that's a long drawn out process, and unless you've got some software to help you out, and we wanted to come up with a template where you could play or you could create a few monsters at the beginning of your game, and it'd take it half an hour to make a few rather than half an hour to make one. And they would work perfectly fine with the monsters that you already play with. But if you wanted to create a whole bunch of orc thugs and didn't want to level them up, but wanted them to do orc thuggy kind of things, or if somebody mentions, it's all like, well, you said there was a baby dragon down there, and you're like, oh crap, I don't have anything for a baby dragon. You can create it pretty much on the fly, or at least have a better sense of what the numbers are without jumping through the hoops of the full robust monster creation rules that we use for bestiaries and stuff like that.
Okay, so the new simple the new simple monster creation rules is a way to make monsters quickly, but they're going to look like all the stat blocks and stuff are going to be as
the stat blocks are going to be a little bit simplified. It's going to be a shorter stat block. But it's going to give you all of the information you need to run the monster, and give you a little bit more freedom on how you create monsters. You can kind of, in some ways, it gives you a lot of options to add classes without actually adding classes to it, to make a monster more, sort of the brute, I'm going to beat on you sort of monster, and more mastermind monsters and stuff like that. So you can just ask the simple questions of what do I want, like how do I want this monster to look, what do I want this monster to do, and through a few steps, you should have at the end a monster that it's all like, yep, this will survive the 20 minutes of game time, and will do awful things to the PCs or at least challenge them, and I don't feel so bad about not actually making a stat block or finding the stat block that I wanted. In a lot of ways, it's purely a tool for GMs who don't have a lot of time on their hands or need to come up with something really on the fly.
Can you give us an example of a monster you've put together with this system?
Yeah. Actually, Logan and actually Rob Schwalb did the grunt work on this, but we've got, there's like a night hag soul collector. And
that sounds lovely.
Yeah, and she's got all of the things that she needs and a whole bunch of utility spell-like abilities and new abilities that she can put together, and then she's even got a little lost soul thing that comes with her, so it acts kind of more, you've got this sort of pet class night hag that was really easy to create. We take some really complicated monsters, some dragons, and present them in a shorter stat block that's easier to use. There's a pit fiend back here that we basically recreated. Now, these monsters going through this process, which is kind of the step of create an array, put on some graphs, add some special abilities, and you're good to go. Like if you've got a pit fiend that you've created with these rules and the pit fiend that's in the bestiary, they're going to look a little different, but they're going to act the same, and they're going to be roughly the same power level. But we're also kind of interested to see what people think about the simplified stat block as well. It's a bit of a departure, but allows you to put most lower to mid-level stats on the size of an index card or something similar, or show them as a full page on your phone screen or whatnot. So we also want to see what people think about that simplified stat block and what they like about it, what they don't like about it. just because stat blocks are tricky to get right. How much is too much information? How much is not enough information? How much do you need to play? How much do you want? Just because you want to double check to make sure we did the math right, and stuff like that. And it also sort of tears apart the math of the system too. And so if you want a better idea of the math of how a monster really works, rather than the calculus of bonuses that you add here and things that you have to have if it's a certain type, that the full monster creation rules have, you can get a better understanding of what a monster needs to perform well in an encounter, rather than what it needs to get through the system of monster creation.
Yeah, go ahead, bro.
I guess the half giant's craft needlepoint skill is not exactly pertinent to the encounter.
No. But when you're making an outsider and you have to pick 10 class skills, you have to make sure all the ranks go somewhere, right? This sort of cuts a lot of that out and says, okay, you're primarily going to play this in a combat encounter or a very freewheeling role-playing encounter. You're not going to need all of the things that make a monster necessary in a full stat block write-up.
I know that whenever I've designed a monster, the longest process is choosing the feats, and when I GM a monster, the section I pay the least attention to is its feats.
Yeah. And so, we try to present it in a much easier way and let you make decisions based on what you want the monster to do, rather than what the monster should have. And a lot of times we don't even give you feats here. The system, it makes it so you kind of have some options to add some feat-like objects in there, and then they go directly into the stat block. And you don't even have to worry about them. You don't have to worry about, does he have power attack? Should I power attack here and everything else? We just kind of assume that certain monsters are going to power attack, and there's a semblance of that in the choices that you make when creating a monster.
Now this sounds a little bit like it's got a 4th edition Dungeons & Dragons influence. Would you say that's fair?
Yeah, I would say that's totally fair. As one of the people that worked on that game and worked on monsters a lot, there was something that we took out of that experience was monsters should do what you want monsters to do, not what the Matrix tells you monsters should do. Like, monsters are really creations of every GM's imagination, and while we love to provide new monsters and new options for you, at the end of the day, the monster needs to do what you want it to do in the course of the adventure, the course of the story. And so yeah, I totally pitch this thing because I love actually the way of all the complaints you can level on 4th edition, monster creation I don't think is one of them.
That's probably my favorite part of 4th edition is monsters are designed by doing the cool thing first.
Yeah. And so yeah, it's a way that you can do that with Pathfinder, and I think, it's one of the reasons why Logan Bonner and Rob Schwalb took the lead on this thing. Is I knew both of those guys had an understanding of the system because they worked on it a lot, and I knew that both of those guys would figure out how to port it over to Pathfinder because they know that system.
Is there any other 4th edition influence that made it into Pathfinder Unchained?
Not directly. I developed a section on sort of flexible alignment where everybody starts out as neutral or as close to neutral as they can, and through the course of adventure and things like moral dilemmas, you choose your alignment over time through your actions. And then at higher levels, you become part of cosmic struggles based on whatever actions, and you gain little bits of benefits. That was an idea that I pitched while we were working on 4th edition that I really liked, but we ended up getting a different alignment system, and so it gave me the chance to go back and sort of revisit that and put it in the Pathfinder rule set.
I'm glad you didn't just bring over the 4th edition alignment system.
No. That is a fine alignment system.
Now I will point out this will make the 3rd alternate alignment system in Pathfinder now.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the great thing about alignment systems is everybody wants them and nobody's ever really happy with them. And so I think in a lot of ways there's a lot of room for design space to get alignments right. And unfortunately, you're never going to get alignments right because it's taking objective rules bits and placing them in a subjective world, which is sort of one of the fun hide-and-seek games that fantasy role-playing games always create. But nobody's ever going to be totally happy with the alignment system. We can just have degrees.
Now, before we drift too far from talking about classes, a lot of the questions we've been getting from chat are class-related. So I just want to go back. And Kevin Hanley had a question. He asked on Facebook, are there plans to introduce content from Pathfinder Unchained into Pathfinder Society, perhaps via Chronicle sheets or other methods? And along similar lines, Matt Harris via chat said, will Pathfinder Unchained classes show up in other Pathfinder products like Adventure Paths?
Both of those talk to parts of the company that, to be honest, I don't speak for. I would imagine. Well, I mean, Pathfinder Society always deals with books in one way, shape, or form. So I am almost positive you're going to see how Pathfinder Society deals with the content in Unchained. That's just what they do. As far as adventure paths, that's a really good question because I was actually writing an encounter for an adventure, and I really wanted to use the Unchained Monk in it, and I meant to go ask somebody about that today, whether or not that's cool. I would imagine mostly the class as it is. They'll just have to put a bug on it and everything else, but I could be just dead wrong about that. The Adventure Path team may have already made a decision on how they want to handle that, and they're just going to tell me no. So, I don't know.
Do you have a post-it? Maybe just take a note like, oh yeah, I was supposed to ask about the Unchained Monk for that adventure I'm writing.
Yeah, no, I definitely have to do that tomorrow because, I was hoping to write that encounter tonight, which I think I'm just going to write the encounter and put the Unchained Monk in, and then, deal with disappointment if I get told no.
Oh.
I'd be actually surprised if I got told no. All of the team, sometimes when the design team or even, the development team creates something, it's always a challenge for some teams to want to use that. We go to Pathfinder Society and we tell them, hey, we're making a book full of, stuff that you could use if you really kind of want, and they just kind of groan. But they always go about it looking at ways where they can incorporate it where possible. So I would expect to see an announcement on how Pathfinder Society is dealing with Unchained sometime in the near future, but I couldn't tell you what that answer is going to be, either because, and you pick, I don't know, or I can't say.
Ooh. In the design meeting, how often did you guys say, oh, this will really screw up the Pathfinder Society guys?
I don't think we ever say that, right? I mean, because, you go to the Pathfinder Society guys, and you really, the last thing you want is Mark Moreland coming and complaining in your office, because he'll go on and on and on, and you want to yell at him and say, shut up, Mark, and throw him out, but you can't, because that's just rude. And so, yeah, just so we don't get Mark in our office too many times, we try not to do that. Or at least say it too loudly, or shut the door, or whatever.
This does actually bring up a question I've been having about these for a while now. You mentioned that you might use the Unchained Monk in the venture you're writing. How do you, when we're talking about the Unchained Monk, or putting this on a character sheet and need to differentiate it, or in an adventure and need to differentiate it, what's the form?
Well, basically, I would write it, half-elf, monk, 6th-level monk, and then after monk it would say Pathfinder Unchained. In the same way that we will, if there's a magus in an adventure, they'll put it ultimate magic in parentheses after that line, just so the person who picks up the new adventure path and just started out on Pathfinder, wants to run it for their friends, will at least know that they have to go track this thing down if they want to understand it all, and and then swear at us until they figure out you can get it free online.
And then if you want to have fun, you can arm them with chainmail and a spiked chain.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Unchained, but so many chains.
Right. We did joke quite a bit during the development of this that it's called Pathfinder Unchained, but sometimes it felt like Pathfinder slightly restrained, right? It's all, just because we wanted it to be as modular as possible and everything else, and there was every once in a while, God, I wish we could rip out the pieces of this and just go for broke, but it's all like, it has to kind of work with the people, the games that people are playing, and it can't be 20 pages long, so you can tear out things.
Well, speaking of that, what's one of the crazier ideas that you guys batted around and then you decided, nope?
Oh, there were a lot of crazy ideas. And it's been so long ago, and you go, that's crazy. I can't think of a damn one. A lot of times, you could try to forget the crazy ideas. So later on, they could pop in your head, and you might not think they're that crazy, and you could create something new. But I think we got just about everything we wanted to in here. There were some sort of pie in the sky sort of things, like, could we make a thing where power attack was a little easier to use, and then we figured out, well, that's only a one-page section, and we can look at that in other sections of the game. But yeah, I don't think there was anything totally crazy that we ended up just shooting in the head and walking away quickly. I think we did all the crazy things we wanted to do for this book, and maybe then some.
You said that you can't speak for the other departments, but what about for your own department? Will Unchained stuff, and actually this is inspired by Dustin Nelson's question in chat, will there be like an Unchained chapter in future RPG line books?
Not that I know of. Of course, like, we just got done, or we're putting to bed Occult Adventures. We're starting on the next book. That topic hasn't come up, at least so far. I could imagine that, the next time when we do, the advanced races guide, or whatever is the next sort of big book with a lot of sort of movable crunchy bits for everybody to use, we'll probably talk about that and see what we want to do with the Unchained. Do we mark archetypes that work particularly well with the Unchained monk? How do we mark those in books, or do we just keep on marching forward and hope people are happy with the new versions and can figure out how to put archetypes in that were basically designed for the older classes onto the new formats?
One of the other module sections that was mentioned was reworking the action economy.
Yeah, reworking the action economy is definitely one of those more pie in the sky things. The action economy for Pathfinder can sometimes be tricky. It's basically got some lashed on features that came out of 3.5 in it, and we were looking for something that was as dirt simple as we could get it, where you didn't have to ask questions about individual things like, does that provoke? And you didn't have to sit there and tell somebody, okay, you've got a bunch of actions you can do in a round. There's move actions, and you could do 2, or you could only do 1, and then there's a standard action. There's these things, intermediate actions, and everything else. We wanted to sort of make a simplified, more streamlined system for action economy that you could play in the game. And so that's one of the sections of the book I hammered out on, and a lot of it is just because I think a lot about action economies, and I've thought a lot about action economy in Pathfinder type role-playing games, and I have some theories and wanted to put a more streamlined action economy where to see what folks thought about some of those theories and how well it played. The biggest problem with the action economy section is because it deals with such a fundamental part of the game in a few number of pages. It's not going to interact with everything that's sitting in the game particularly well, and I try to give some guidelines wherever possible. But it's definitely more sort of like, new frontier rather than you can take the system and it's always going to work with all of your other things. It's just a different way of looking at how your characters can do actions in the game.
A couple of years ago, Sean K. Reynolds ran a game with alternate Pathfinder rules, and one of the big things was a different action economy system. Did that play into the action economy in Unchained at all?
Well, Sean and I, when Sean was working for us, and I miss Sean. I like talking to Sean about this stuff. Well, I hear he's coming back to Seattle, so I'm sure I'll hang out with Sean and we'll talk gaming stuff a good amount. It was something that we both, in a lot of ways, we would talk about it just for fun, because that's what designers do when they're not working on books and they just have random ideas. We definitely influenced each other on what we thought about action economy and how it works and how it should work. So I think a lot of the rules that he came up with that, and a lot of our conversations affected the way that the action economy section in this book works. It's definitely not exactly like Sean's. We disagreed on some aspects too, and we still like going back and forth on those kind of things. But it's in the same vein, right? I think Sean and I both saw a fundamental problem, is putting it too strongly, a challenge that we could try to overcome, especially for new players or players that weren't vested in older editions of the game.
Kudaku's got a question via chat that kind of relates to action economy. He says in mid-levels melee combat, it heavily revolves around squatting, just standing still and getting as many attacks as you can. Does Unchained offer options to make melee combat more mobile?
I think in a lot of ways a new action economy system. That was one of the goals. And it takes away iterative attacks by giving everybody iterative attacks. Basically, when you do an action, you just do one sort of thing. So if you want to attack, you attack. And it's basically a system so fighters later on can be, and other melee combatants can be a lot more mobile. I agree. I actually think that's a thing that I wish didn't happen at mid and higher levels. I like movable, active warriors, and that's a little bit hard with the action economy right now. So yeah, you might want to look at the action economy. There's some other fighter stuff in there too that you may want to look at and see what you think. But yeah, we do take a shot at that issue in the book.
Well, if possible, what would like an example combat round that a warrior would take under this?
So basically, yeah, you just get a number of actions. If you want to move a little and attack, that's fine, and if you want to attack a little and move, that's fine as well. If you want to just sit there and take 2 attacks, I think in a lot of ways, when it comes to mid-level, is because to get all of your iteratives, you have to do you have to sort of have to sit in that space, and sometimes when your first attack downs a person, depending on how your GM runs that, you can't sit there and go, oh, okay, I move. It's like, no, I'm going to roll all of my this guy, and he goes down. The action economy basically splits it up into a number of acts. Each action has a number of acts, and so for instance, here's one charge is, and you get 3 acts around. And so an attack is an act. You can do three attacks in a round if you want to. You're a first level fighter. You can do 3 attacks in a round if you want to. You're a higher level fighter. You do 3 attacks in a round when you want to. But if you make an attack and you down somebody, you can move. You can even move again if you want to do that. So if you charge, you spend 2 acts to charge, and then you get an attack. which is another act, and then you get bonuses because you did your charges the last act. So we play some kind of tricky moves in there, and in order for you to move around some more. But because it is Pathfinder, we couldn't make total fundamental changes to the action economy. We still wanted to work with most things, but it is definitely a different way for you to do it.
Now, I know Alex Agunas will be really upset with me if I don't ask these very specific questions about the rogue.
Okay.
Asking that Mark announced that the Unchained Rogue is going to have dex to damage options. He would like to hear that in more detail, and that's part one of the question. I'll let you handle that now.
Okay. Yeah, he's going to have dex to damage options.
Oh, this is
very
Alex's
robust.
baby.
Very robust ones. I think everybody will actually kind of like it. Yeah, we're coming around on the whole dex to damage thing. I mean, we kind of have to. There's going to be dex to damage. I'm not going to tell you more, but there are options there. You're going to like them.
All right. Well, you touched on the second part of his question, is that he's noticed that you used to have a really hard stance against dex to damage, and now you've kind of eased up on that in the last year or so. Why? What made you change this shift in philosophy?
So the reason why we were a little down on dex to damage, and we're still careful with dex to damage, is so much of the defense of the character hinges on dexterity. There was a lot of concern that putting offensive capability all in one stat was a bit much. And then we sort of thought about it, and some of us made the case, and we had this very big conversation on a movable fighter or a movable combat character likes dexterity the way that a tough one likes strength, right? And it doesn't get the benefit of that armor. It all kind of sits in dexterity, and it's okay to do this in certain places, mostly at some higher levels, so you can't sort of one level dip into it and then go down this other line. That it was okay to do dex to damage. There was a cost there, but it shouldn't be something that we just sort of really try to avoid in the game. We should just put it at the right place, so it's got the right cost. So I think it's just, again, a lot of the stuff in here is just a refinement of our own game and how people want to play the game and what people find fun about the game, and making intelligent decisions about that instead of, this book is written in stone and this is the way it's always going to be. I mean, we want people to enjoy the Pathfinder game as much in 20 years as they do it now, and we're absolutely dedicated to make sure that we watch how people play and what they want, and try to figure out the best way to give them what their heart desires without, totally busting the game apart, which nobody wants.
Have you ever considered actually releasing a special edition of the core rulebook that is written in stone?
Wow, that would be one heavy product. I don't even know how we pay shipping. I mean, you can hurt somebody with a core rulebook pretty badly right now. Not that I've ever done that much, but I mean, it's a big, heavy book, and having that in stone, you would need the armed forces just to deliver that to you, and they would probably crush your house.
So a limited print run then.
Limited print run. And plus, you have to get stonemasons to sort of, type it in, and then the editors would go through it, and if the stonemason, came up with a typo, right, we'd have to throw out that bit of stone and go back to the drawing board. Yeah, it'd all be a big mess. No, we're not going to do that.
Well, you could just ship around a copy of the PRD and a chisel.
Yeah, that's true, right? It's to do it yourself. Rules written in stone.
So we're coming up on our hour. We've got a few more questions from chat. Can we just kind of lightning round a few things?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. Darren Caldemeyer asked via chat, what other subsystems does Pathfinder Unchained have?
Oh, a lot of them. There's actually quite a few alignment systems. There's a couple of, actually a few different ways of dealing with skills. There's a background skill system that ports some of the skills into another category, so you're not competing for the skills you need in combat versus the skills that you can have to give your character a feeling like they're a person in the world and not just a bunch of stats and combat options. There's some variant multi-classing. Talking with alignment, we talk about how to just totally remove alignment from your game. If the only alignment system you're happy with is no alignment system, then go ahead and take a look at that. We've got a stamina and combat trick section, and this in a lot of ways affects the fighter. It gives you an option either just to give the fighter this or to feat into a system where you gain a certain amount of stamina, and each combat feat that you have opens up something related to that combat feat that you can spend a pool of stamina on to gain extra abilities for. We have simplified spellcasting, esoteric magic components, a new system for dealing dealing with magic items that are a little bit more flavorful. Nothing is just a +1. It comes with a bunch of other kind of things as well. So if you want a system for making your magic items in your campaign a little bit more flavorful and not just give out static bonus items, we have a system for that in there. So there's a good amount of stuff for the players to play with, but a lot of the things in here are things that will allow GMs to either improve their game or play the game in a new way, or just make it easier to run it, on a Friday night with your friends.
Yeah, that's something that always bugged me. Like, what to my character is a +1 sword? Like, what is he calling that in world? +1 is meaningless to him.
Right. It's a magic sword. It is my magic sword of magicness and sticky. Yeah. I mean, back in the day, it all made sense, and now they're just tropes. But yeah, I think static bonus items are really good, and they're cheap, and people like them because they don't have to deal with the story of magic and whatnot. But yeah, I'd much rather get an item with a good story and a couple of quirky things that it does, and it still lets me kick butt too.
Zergatan99 or Zerg Titan? Oh, Zerg Titan 99 asks about the magic item system the magic items grow in power with the player. So like the legacy weapons from Dungeons & Dragons 3.5.
Yeah, kind of like that with, but a little bit simpler. It basically, the main assumption, without getting into the bits and pieces of how it works, is yeah, the items just grow with you. You don't have to feed them. You don't have to make sure they poop. Right? It's all you get an item and it grows with you. So your father's sword that you tore from the grip of his dead hands, after the dragon killed him. You can keep that, and it's not going to be too powerful of a magic item when you're lower level, and it's going to be able to kick butt when you're higher level. I mean, we just wanted it to be kind of that simple, and we had to jump through some math hoops to get it there, but yeah, that's the main idea behind that. I think a lot of legacy items have tried to sort of balance it in weird ways, so you were actually spending something in order to gain this kind of nifty thing, and we just kind of assumed that the economy is different. If I'm remembering that system as well as I should be. So yeah, it just kind of allows you to play. We want you to play the games that you want to play, and hopefully you'll find some things in here that even if you didn't think about it before, you're just all like, oh my goodness, this goes in my campaign right now. This is the system I never knew I wanted, and it's right here, or some systems that you really did want. We just hope you find them in here and you love the book, and then it gets worn out so quickly that you have to buy another copy, and maybe you'll send your mom a copy because it's so awesome.
I'm going to send my mom a copy, then wait for the phone call. She just does not understand why I sent her this book.
On a similar line, Kudaku asked, is there a subsystem to avoid the big six?
Ooh. No.
Okay.
Yeah, no.
That's a quick answer. I like it.
Where were you when they were designing this book, Kudaku?
Right.
Benjamin Chernick asks, how much of this book does the Paizo staff now wish were the default Pathfinder rules?
Oh, that's kind of hard.
No, I want an exact number of pages.
Exact number of pages. Here's the thing about it is I think there are parts of this book. I think a lot of us are so happy with the classes that it's all like, those classes could be swapped out, right? I think we just believe, until the players tell us wrong, of course, that they're better versions of the classes. There are definitely parts in here that, just speaking on the design team, I think each one of us wish could be in the core game. When we do this, a lot of times we take a look at a subsystem and say, what do I like about it? What do I don't like about it? How do I think I can improve it? But I don't think you would get a consensus from the entire Paizo staff. I think just like the audience out there, there's some parts of it that some people love, and there are other parts of it that other people love. Because we're gamers and we can't even agree on what goes on a pizza.
I mean, pineapple. Duh.
Well, sure, Ryan. We'll talk about that later.
Like they eat normally.
Right.
So then, actually, what about, is there any fear that this book will splinter the gamer base? That some people will be like, no, this is my Pathfinder to me, and Pathfinder will be different from group to group?
Well, I think in some ways Pathfinder is different from group to group. I don't think two groups play totally the same. Even you go into Pathfinder Society, where they try to create that experience as even as possible. It's hard to do because we all take our imaginations into this game. It all looks different because we're seeing it not. I mean, we see it on the page, and we might fight about how rules are read and everything else, but play actually happens, through the eyes and minds of the people sitting around the table. I actually think that's a strength of the game, rather than a bug, and I don't think this game is going to splinter more than the wonderful splintering that already happens in playing a tabletop role-playing game.
Last couple of questions. Do you know anything about how the OGL will affect Pathfinder Unchained?
I don't. I mean, other than just like all of our stuff, this is all. Yeah, it's OGL. So if you want to use this stuff, it's out there for you to use. I don't know. I don't think. Maybe I don't understand exactly the question.
Let's say a third-party publisher wanted to do The Witch Unchained.
Yeah.
That's something they could release, potentially?
I think that's something that they could release now.
Oh.
I mean, I don't know about calling it Unchained. You might get, a call from somebody at Paizo who worries about brands a heck of a lot more than I do. But if you were like, oh, I want to make there's some issues I see with the Witch, and I'm going to produce a new Witch. Not being a total expert on the OGL, I think you can kind of do that, right? We basically give you free rein to do kind of what you want. I think there are some GMs who do that already. Either the Witch doesn't fit their idea of the way witches should be in their campaign world, or they've already made fixes that make sense to them.
Well, there's already like 3 or 4 different spell-less rangers out there in the world.
Oh, yeah.
And will we ever see an Unchained 2?
Oh, well, when I buy a magic ball and I can figure out, what we're doing exactly next year as compared to,
where are you getting this magic ball?
Yeah, I was. Maybe. No, maybe. I'll give these nice, simple answers. Yeah, it depends on how well it's received and how well it sells and how well people like it. And if there's a demand to do an Unchained 2, I'm sure we do an Unchained 2. We probably wouldn't call it Unchained 2. We call it, Pathfinder Unshackled or be something. We don't
Even
like
less chained.
Right. Yeah. Bestiaries, I think, are the limit of where we put numbers. We don't want to make Ultimate Magic 2 and go down that line and everything else. But could there be another Unchained book in the future? Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, our understanding of what people want when they play Pathfinder and our understanding of where we want the game to go becomes more solidified day by day. And so I think, if you took the same group of people in 5 years and sat there and said, what would you want to change, or what would you want to change that wasn't covered in Unchained, I'm sure they could find a long list of things to write about.
Excellent. Well, thank you for joining us, Stephen. I invite you to tell people about the Gauntlet 2015 fundraiser that just launched today.
Oh, yeah. So we're doing the Gauntlet again this year. You might remember it from last year. It's a gaming event in the Seattle area for charity. A bunch of game companies and game groups all compete to win the prize, which is this nice, nifty gauntlet that you can actually wear and punch your boss in the face with. We won last year, and we reached a bunch of goals, which meant that I had to punch Jason and put up a video for it with the gauntlet. He was not happy about that. This year I've got a new challenge that everybody else in the company other than me will get to punch Jason if we reach double our allotted goal, and we win the gauntlet. We also have to win, so we could let you down on that one. Which Jason doesn't like that idea, and he's been threatening me with all sorts of things. Yeah, I think I can get enough momentum in the company. There's enough people who like the idea of creating this line into Jason's office, and just getting their turn that I think I can get that passed through. And so each member of the Paizo team has a donation page. Anytime you donate to one of the persons in the team, the donation goes to the Paizo team. So you can pick the person you want. Don't pick Jason, pick me. And then, yeah, we raised a bunch of money for charity. Jason just put out some goals, some personal goals. I'm going to be putting out some personal goals. Jessica Price and Eric Mona, our other two team members, are going to be putting out personal goals. And then I wouldn't be surprised if you saw some Paizo-specific goals where everybody wins, where, if we reach certain levels, we'll unleash something cool for the whole community. And that's one of the things we're trying to do with this one too, is we're not raffling off anything. It's when we reach our goals and we achieve them, everybody kind of wins.
And so, Darren Caldemeyer in chat says that if we support you, we get Jason to wear a 4-inch neon green button for one day of PaizoCon that says, "Yes, I have a minute. Please tell me about your character."
Yes. So that was actually he came up with that idea on my Facebook page, and so the idea is both Jason and I right now have $1,000 personal goals. Last time I checked, and this could have changed, I'm slightly ahead of Jason. I've got like $95, and he's got $35. But he just put a bunch of goals. But if I reach that $1,000 goal before Jason reaches his $1,000 goal, then I will absolutely tie down Jason and make him wear that button.
Why are you so mean to Jason?
Because Jason and I have been friends for a long time, and so if he can't be mean to your really good friends, who can you be mean to? It's a sign of love on my part. I love Jason.
You couldn't have a goal that you'll make Jason his favorite pie?
Jason could make his own favorite pie, right? Jason, every once in a while, I mean, and I do it for the good of Jason. Jason needs a little bit of humility, and I am here to give that to him because I'm that good of a friend.
When you say that everyone in the company other than you has to punch Jason, does that include Jason?
Well, it's if they choose to punch Jason, right? Conscientious observers can, of course, sit there and say, "I'm not going to punch Jason," but yeah, that also means Jason. But of course, Jason will have to decide whether or not he wants to punch Jason, which I think is a decision he makes every single morning when he wakes up and looks in the mirror. But I'm not sure of it.
All right. Well, thank you very much for joining us again, Stephen.
Thank you.
You're going to be at PaizoCon?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Excellent. Well, I'll be seeing you there, and I'm sure some of our listeners will be as well.
Yeah, I look forward to it.
All right. Take it easy, and we'll be right back with the news.
Sounds good.
All right. So, Stephen, the interview's done. If you don't want to hang out with us for the rest of the night, all you got to do is press the red receiver button, like the phone receiver.
Okay.
And we'll exit the call.
Alrighty, awesome. Yeah, I'm gonna go get some more coffee and tinkle, but I'll come back for a little bit to.
Okay. All right. News. Mm-hmm.
Oh, I've still got Stephen in the chat. Stephen, are you still there?
He said he might come back. So if he,
sorry, I missed that.
I don't know for certain, but if he does, he's more than welcome to talk about the news.
And actually, if he does, he can help me with that question I added to no questions. In fact, maybe I'll move that to the top.
Mm-hmm.
Not sure how much he had to do with the swashbuckler. All right. Well, do you want to start the news without him? See what happens?
Yeah.
All right. Cool.
Okay. I'm just doing a quick once-over, making sure I remember all this. Yeah, okay. Good. I'm ready to go.
All right. Sorry, just got to open a link.
Let me do the first news item, by the way.
Okay, cool. Then we will start in 3, 2, 1. In the Pathfinder news segment, we talk about the latest happenings for the Pathfinder role-playing game, sometimes from Paizo, sometimes from third-party publishers, or in the case of our first news item, from second-party publishers, also known as licensed publishers.
Yes. Because Ryan didn't have running Rise of the Rune Lords easy enough, Hero Lab has announced that they are releasing, or have released, it's available now, isn't it?
It's available for pre-order.
Oh, for pre-order. The Rise of the Rune Lords in the Hero Lab, which means they're porting all the NPCs and the monsters and this cool stuff in the Hero Lab so that you can pull it up in that software and use it during play. Now, I love Hero Lab a lot. It's a software I use frequently and thoroughly. I admit I don't do this sort of thing with it very often because, I don't actually have it open during play, but I know a lot of people who do, and it has a really neat combat manager that tracks like status effects and initiative order and stuff like that. So having all that stuff built in is a neat thing.
Yeah, I am definitely getting this. I am very much looking forward to it. A couple of highlights. You don't need all of the packages. So if, let's say, it's an NPC who's it's a monster from Bestiary 2 with levels from a book, from a class in, say, the Advanced Player's Guide, you don't need to own the Hero Lab Advanced Player's Guide or Bestiary 2. You don't need to own any of those licenses. You just need to own the Rise of the Rune Lords, and you will have all the information you need to run that encounter.
Now, this is going to be the anniversary edition, right?
This is the anniversary edition, and actually, funny enough, you mentioned that, Param, because this past Monday I ran an encounter with a spellcaster in Rise of the Rune Lords, and usually when I run spellcasters or monsters with a lot of spell-like abilities, I will open up the monster in the PFSRD, because then it's got all of its abilities hyperlinked, and especially its spells, it's a lot easier to manage. Except that the version of this particular monster, or this particular NPC that I was running, was the 3rd edition, or the 3.5 non-anniversary edition. So I was running it, and I was like seeing the tactics. It says, oh, he uses this spell. I go over to the PFSRD. It's like, that spell's not even on his list. What's happening? So it's nice to know that this will be the latest version, the version that I will be playing, kind of what's become the new official version of Rise of the Rune Lords, I believe. I see this making everything run so much smoother. Like, it says it'll have all the NPCs. So there's a lot of NPCs you see often. Like, there's the cleric that you meet in Sandpoint, and there have been a couple of times where the PCs come back from an adventure and like, well, I have a disease or a curse or a poison or whatever. Does he have the spell to save that? And it's like, I don't have his stat block anywhere. I don't know. Now I will. And I know a lot of these NPCs have been fleshed out. I've got a Meiko's stat block in the back of an issue of Pathfinder comic. It's that much more books than I'm managing. Whereas if I get Rise of the Rune Lords AP for Hero Lab, that's it. I just need that one app. I'll just have a tablet or a new laptop in front of me, and it'll help me run the whole thing. And I am super excited about this.
Yeah, it sounds like a cool thing. I definitely also like it because one of the things that I've had to do is, like, say Amiko joins the party, because that's something that can very reasonably happen in the course of Rise of the Rune Lords. A common NPC could join the party, like Amiko, and then you need to level her up. Hero Lab makes that easy, and if you can just part Amiko in and then go, okay, level her up right in Hero Lab, and it's all good to go.
It is $24.99 for pre-order. I don't know if that's going to be the regular price or if this is a discounted price because it's pre-order, but I do like the way they break down the math on the Wolf Lair website. They say that there's 200 encounters across the 434-page adventure, which means that that's 12 cents each. 12 cents an encounter.
Yeah, I mean, I would, considering the amount of NPCs in this, I would consider that comparable or even larger than a bestiary worth of stat blocks.
Param, if you could go back and do it all over again, how would you run Rise of the Rune Lords differently?
I would... Oh gosh. Well, first I would run it in the tavern on like a horrible stone throne with all the runes carved around it, with that Sahedron medallion around my neck, and of course I'd hold the anniversary edition in my hand because, you know, I have to do all the carzogging it up. Now, of course, I've got all the sound effects ready to go, so I'd wired up and the room's already wired up for sound. So, man, just, you know, get the Sirenscape going in through there. When my PCs need to know, you know, a summary of what happened, I just throw in the audio CD, the audio drama that got pushed for it. I got all the pawns, the minis. I've got the paper minis. I mean, good grief, man! If I'm surprised that they haven't released a Rise of the Rune Lord Snuggie.
I don't need a Rise of the Rune Lord Snuggie.
You say that until it gets chilly in your game room.
Matt Harris in chat says the fans have already done most of the adventure paths for Hero Lab. Combat Manager is better live, though. I'm not sure I understand the second part of that, but if the fans have already done the adventure paths, is this something that anyone can just download, Matt?
Oh,
do you know?
Yeah, things like this. If you look on like the Hero Labs forums and community forums, like things like, you know, the stat blocks for this stuff in Hero Lab format has been done. You could create any of these stat blocks yourself using Hero Lab. You can honestly, Hero Lab is so robust in its tools that it gives you just for the base purchase that technically you don't need to buy their source books. You could enter all that yourself fairly easily in most cases. What you're buying with these packages is time saving, and you know, just like PC Gen, the open source character creator for D20 and games that supports Pathfinder. There's lots of like fan-made modules for it. So that especially where PC Gen doesn't have, you know, doesn't have a sell those licenses directly. A lot of the fans have put together. So for Hero Lab, there are lots of fan options for Rise of the Rune Lords, especially, and other adventures.
Next bit of news is Pathfinder Society news. We've got new faction logos.
And they suspiciously look like they could make pins of these.
Interesting.
I would love pins of these logos. That would be awesome. But people have been asking for Society logo pins since there has been a Society.
Now, if people don't remember, at the beginning of Season 6, which is the Year of the Sky Key, our current season of Pathfinder Society, most of the factions were combined in some way. So Grand Lodge stayed the same, and Silver Crusade stayed the same, and then all of the other geography-based factions became a philosophy-based faction. And so, like, the Zarni and the Kadiran faction became the Exchange, which is all about money. And with that came a whole bunch of new faction logos that a lot of people weren't satisfied with. They felt that they were a little too simple. And I'm of two minds about this, because originally faction logos and religious symbols and these things like that were things that anyone could sketch. Like, anyone can sketch a Christian cross or a Star of David. You can do that very easily, and that made it easy to spread the message. So I like the idea of a very simple design, but that wasn't the type of simple that the original original versions of the new faction logos was. Those were just kind of they lacked texture, they lacked a lot of things that just made them have more impact as just a piece of art. And so since Paizo was going for art, they wanted this to be something that looks good, something that you would like, print this on your character sheet, or you would print it on your table tent, and you would want it to look as nice as it could. They went back, they redesigned it, and they're just nicer. Like every single one of these faction logos is just crisp. It's pretty, and they've also, each one has a different dominant color, so it's also easy to just at a glance look at it and say like, oh, purple, so I know that's Dark Archive, or red, and so that is what is the one that was the not Ruby Phoenix, but the Tian Sha one, the Sovereign Court.
Yeah, they definitely look better. They definitely got the textures and the faux 3D, and this is. But at the same time, they kept the basic shape, so you could definitely see. This is what it would look like if carved on the door of the faction leader's office or something. But at the same time, if it's just scratched into the leather back of a Pathfinder journal next to his AC/DC logos, it would be easy to just do the outlines.
Yeah, it's true. They're yeah. You know what? Every single one of these is something that a PC with just very basic fine motor skills, they could do a version of that. They could do fire out of a book. They could do two hands over a coin, a sword with wings, a scarab with a diamond, a firebird. Yeah, no, these are all out. So you know what? These all fulfill my original criteria. I have no complaints. I am happy with all 7 of these logos.
Yeah, and they're also available in the community use pack, and those are available for download. So if you want to start using these on your character sheets or a community use project or various other things, just hop on, get it from the community use. You'll get these nice high quality images that you're able to use. Paizo does this for all of their a lot of their logos and such. So you don't have to have a glitchy JPEG pulled from a website picture.
Next bit of news, there's more new Paizo hirings. We were introduced to new assistant developer Amanda Hammond-Kuntz. The assistant developer is a new position as of about a month ago, and so a lot of the people that we know as freelancers or significant people in the third-party community, they've been hired up into this new position. So it's cool that we're seeing familiar faces graduating into a full-time position. Amanda Hammond-Kuntz, you might know, she designed the Ghost Ship and the Pirate Ship write-ups in the Ships of the Inner Sea. She was the editor and developer of Deep Magic for Kobold Press. She's got dozens of credits, and she's done panels and whatnot at PaizoCon. So she's a face that's been around in the community for a while now, and it's cool to see her now getting a full-time gig out of it.
Oh yeah, and I'm really, kind of hoping that since they got another software. Oh, sorry, wrong
Yeah,
hire.
we haven't gotten there yet.
Okay, then I'm gonna hold my tongue. Though I will admit that Deep Magic from Kobold Press has been one of my favorite third-party releases to have come out. Though fair disclosure, I was one of the Kickstarter backers.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a great book, and the wizard that plays at my table likes it a lot because he's gotten some spells out of it for his demon kicking buttness that he needed. So good on her.
And then Param, why don't you take over the next new hire?
They've also hired a software developer, which is Julie Lasarino, and I hope I got your name right, Julie.
I think that's a capital I.
Oh, a capital I?
Yeah,
okay.
I think it's Aya Carino.
Aya Carino, and sorry for messing up your name, Julie Aya Carino. But another software developer I like, because one of the things I wish Paizo did more was more digital support, which is a crazy thing to say because they do so much e-publishing. There's the PRD. They do a lot of partnerships with other companies, but at the same time, just having some more first-party development and production, and that we can really see what they intend things to do. Is something I really want to see. Instead of just Pathfinder patch for Hero Lab, I would like to see what Pathfinder would make a digital play assistant, or I would like to see if they decided to do another kick up on the PRD instead of having to rely on third-party iPhone apps and third-party Android phone apps. They're great, well done independent efforts and third-party efforts, but I would really like to see what Paizo's vision of those things would be.
Well, then you'll be happy to know the current Paizo software team, the technology team, it's a 7-person team.
Yeah, that's a lot of people to just do a website. So
yeah,
I have to imagine there's more coming down the pipe.
I did not realize this team had grown as much as it had. I'm curious what is Paizo's intent with all of these people?
Well, there's that game space thing that has never really come around yet. That might still be in the pipeline. Who knows? They haven't announced they've stopped developing on it, and every now and then I hear that they're still working on it. So I don't know for sure if they're still working on it, but there was that effort, and I guess Roll20 sort of has become the dominant play space though. For anything, though I've been playing a lot of my digital games lately, or watching a lot of my digital games and wanting to play digital games on Tabletop Simulator. If you've never messed with this thing, it's a beautiful piece of software worth looking into.
I have.
It's like the 3D table, and it looks like it came out of. It looks like Geek Chic made it. Looks like the Sultan.
Cool. Then I have.
And it's a 3D thing, and like it doesn't do any of the rules handling. It just lets you lay tiles, and it has dice, and it has physics simulation. So you throw the dice, and they actually bounce on the table. And it has a button. You can just flip the table. And there's like dozens and dozens and dozens of fan support for it, so that just about any type of game has like the tokens and that you could use to build 3D play spaces, and like the dungeon tiles and fantasy terrain sections on that is just crazy detailed. Like, and they've even got like the little dragon miniatures. They got a bunch of those that like they're animated, so you can tell them to do different animations. So you can put the dragon mini and it's like Rawr! And they kill it. It goes ah. Okay, that's a random tangent. I'm sure they're working on cool stuff, because you're right, that's a lot of people to do nothing. So they don't hire new people unless they're doing something. So I'm definitely hoping it's something cool. Anyway, I randomed on that.
Going back to chat, so Matt Harris has provided me with a link to the Hero Lab community creations, and it's true, it does have Rise of the Rune Lords Anniversary Edition as a zip file. And it looks like it's got most of the adventure paths here. I'm curious how these will compare to the official one. Especially, I'm curious if you need to own every element, so every bestiary and every whatnot that's referenced, if you need those for all of these fan-made ones to work.
Well, I've run into, when I've used some fan-made stuff like that in the past, I've run into both things happening, where it assumes you have the books. Some of the downloads I've downloaded like that, and some of them have gone through the effort to, in addition to coding the NPC, they would then code in the parts of that NPC that is needed from other sources. And it's, especially since it's all open content, that happens fairly reasonably. In fact, I guess there's even less barriers for these fan creations than for Pathfinder specifically, and then some other RPGs that aren't open.
Alex is yelling at me.
Yelling?
Well, it's all caps. He's saying that Sovereign Court was Taldor, which is true, but it was also the Lantern Lodge, or at least it has some remnants from the Lantern Lodge in there. And Lantern Lodge is the faction that I was trying to reference.
Right. I thought the Lantern Lodge just got a double tap, Brian.
It did, but then the faction head, whose name is escaping me now, she is involved in the Sovereign Court.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, she's somewhere. Trust me. there's still some Lantern Lodge influence out there.
Well, it's better than the Shadow Lodge. All right. Well, and of course, in our last bit of news, Jason Bowman has also, we've talked about this with Stephen when he was here, Jason Bowman has also announced that he's taking his pledges for Paizo's effort in the Gauntlet, and you can find that up on the Gauntlet 2015 website, or just search for the Gauntlet Jason Bowman 2015. Google it. But yeah, he's also competing. So if you would rather support Jason's efforts to making Stephen Radney-MacFarland here wear the pin or whatever his is, then you can go there and do it.
Yeah. So the way this works, this is a fundraiser to feed the homeless and low-income families, and it's cool. The way that they tabulate it is the number of the amount of money raised, and then the number of meals for a family of 4 that the amount of money that's been raised creates. So right now, Paizo as a whole have raised $155. Remember, this only started a few hours ago. So already they've raised enough money to feed 50 or to have 51 meals for a family of 4 made. And there's 38 days remaining in the campaign. And what's cool is that if you prefer Stephen Radney-MacFarland's personal rewards, then you can donate to him. If you prefer Jason's, you can donate to him. Jessica Price, Eric Mona, that's the 4-person team. This all goes towards Paizo's total of trying to raise $4,000. So there's a competition within the team, and then there's the Paizo team itself, which is competing against other teams, competing in a very friendly and altruistic way. But don't feel like if you are supporting one, then you're kind of cannibalizing Paizo's efforts. No, you are supporting... Any one of them supports Paizo as a whole.
Yep. And all of them support the charity.
Indeed.
If you choose to support their rivals for some reason.
Then you're a monster.
Yes.
No, you can choose whoever you want to support, but I'm assuming that some of our listeners have a vested interest in Paizo and Pathfinder.
Right. Yep. Looks like Jason Bowman's rewards are that he will be, if his $500 and $1,000 marks are both releasing PDFs of Pathfinder stuff.
Ah, so instead of going the humiliate Jason route that Stephen seems to be doing, Jason wants to actually reward us with the cool stuff for free. Huh.
He's done cool stuff with his PDF rewards in the past. There was that really neat dungeon he released. I forget what the cause was for that, but that was really cool. And of course, there's Minotaur Games. So when Jason digs PDFs by himself, they're usually pretty cool.
And that does it for the news. We will be right back to answer your questions in the No Question segment right after this.
Yay!
And Stephen, what are the odds you're back? Oh, did you mute him, or did he mute himself, Pam?
He muted himself.
I muted myself so I could, eat my dinner and you guys in here.
We appreciate that. Do you care to join us for No Questions? Some of them are rules questions that might pertain to things you've designed.
Oh, jeez. Something that I shouldn't do, but yeah, let's do it anyway.
Excellent.
Now, fair warning, even if he says that this is not to be considered canon Paizo word of sainthood.
Well,
oh yeah. No, if they want that, they've got to go through the FAQ process, which
right.
Which thank you for.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, mostly Mark came on, and he's got the energy and definitely the mind to deal with that. So he's done a great job of tabulating them and figuring out what we need to do and coming up to the group with what the issues are and what the possible fixes we could put in. So yeah, a lot of that has Mark to thank. He's done an excellent job managing that process.
Then our goal is to have Mark on the podcast in the next couple of months.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you should have Mark on the podcast. Mark's a good guy. I like working with him. I'm blessed that I get to work with people that I really like. So, and Mark has this incredible memory that I really admire, and he's sometimes he comes at things in an overly complicated way that I'm just like, well, Mark, what are you doing? Slow down. slow down your brain a little bit and stop trying to give us answers in an equation. And
didn't he leave MIT to work for Paizo?
yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah, the guy is wicked smart and really nice. And very short, which Jason and I like because we like looking taller. But but no, he's really fantastic guy, and he works extremely well with the team. He and Logan and I share an office, so we get this nice sort of design pit atmosphere going on that I really like, and I hope doesn't get split up anytime soon. I like working with a group, mostly a group that good.
All right, then we're definitely gonna have Mark on soon.
Definitely.
You recommended him.
Yeah. You should have Logan too. Logan's fantastic.
We had Logan
as well.
Oh man, I was gonna say not too long ago, but I feel like it was last January.
Oh wow. Yeah.
Yeah, it might be that good. Yeah. Logan's a lot of fun as well. But
there's a lot of people that work for Paizo. We try and get you guys on with a fair rotation, but
right.
So.
I know when we grow all the time.
This was easier when we could count you all on fingers and toes.
Yeah. Jason
stop
and
growing.
I were driving back from something today, and he's like, "Whose car is that? Who's And I'm like, "I don't know, man. I can't keep it." Once upon a time, we all knew whose car belonged to whom, and now it's like there's too many new people. Really good people too. So it was great having Crystal come back. That was everybody was happy to see Crystal again. We all love Crystal. So
she's one of my favorite people.
Yeah, she is really good people.
Mm-hmm.
All right, are you ready for these questions?
Sure.
Cool. We'll start this segment in 3, 2, 1. In the no question segment, we take your answers. We take your questions. We try and answer them, be they rules questions, questions about running the game, just our personal preferences. Whatever questions you have, we will try and answer. Param, how can people get their questions for us?
Well, the easiest way to get a question for us is to email nodirection@hotmail.com, or you can go to our Facebook page at facebook.com/nodirection and ask us a question there. And that's pretty much the only way to do it right now. But make sure that you do identify it as a quote-unquote no question so that we know to include your question in the pot for the show episodes.
And we are lucky enough to be joined once again by Stephen Radney-MacFarland, who's going to be helping us with some of these questions.
Hey.
Thank you.
I think I'm just going to be laughing at some of the questions.
Oh, that's good.
Well, this first one is actually from me. It came up in my gaming group on Monday. It was one of those rules questions where we found the rule in question, we cited it, and then both sides of the argument looked at each other and said, "See."
Oh, no.
Oh, no. Those are the worst. All right, lay it on me.
All right. It's related to the Swashbuckler class that we designed for the Advanced Class Guide.
Oh, so it's my fault.
Yes. The Strike Swashbuckler deed states, to use this deed, a swashbuckler cannot attack with a weapon in her other hand or use a shield other than a buckler.
Yeah.
Is this saying a swashbuckler cannot attack while wielding a weapon in her offhand, or is it saying a swashbuckler cannot use this deed to attack, with attacks made with the offhand?
Okay, so it's basically you've got the intention, and we'll see, mileage may vary, is you can do it as long as you're not doing two-weapon fighting with that full attack, and you are not carrying a shield other than a buckler. So while you could carry another weapon in your other hand, as long as you don't use that in the attacks that you're going to be using, you can use Precise Strike.
Then our swashbuckler player was on the right side of the argument, and he's going to be happy he's not going to have to recreate his character.
All right.
See, that was easy.
All right. The next question comes from Shannon. Vichita?
Vichita, yeah, that's what I would say.
Vichita. And this came to us via our Facebook page. Both of you play/run APs and PFS. How much percentage non-combat encounters do you find in a scenario? Would the core rulebook benefit with equal amount of combat and non-social and social/non-combat rules? I find that varies greatly from adventure to adventure. How much of it is pure combat as traditional dungeon type exploration, and how much of it is role playing. And sometimes the assumption is wrong when you look at the adventure very, very quickly. For instance, Wrath of the Righteous I expected to be one of the most combatness of all combatness adventure paths, and it has had a ridiculous amount of roleplay in it in comparison, to the extent that we have gone multiple sessions of nothing but NPC dialogue sessions, and they're good. It's not a bad thing, as well as various other puzzle solving and similar issues. And on the flip side, I can't really think of a flip side. Usually, I'm not surprised the other way. I never thought, oh, this social encounter suddenly became a dungeon crawl. That's never happened to me. But generally, on average, I'm noticing it's usually 2/3 traditional hack and slash adventuring. So maybe it's not pure combat, but it's also the typical explore the thing, active action movie type setup going on. And then the other third is your more traditional social non-combat stuff in games, but that's just been my experience, and it will vary based on what adventures I'm drawn to. I have to admit, I am also drawn to the adventures that have more of the social elements.
Now, I have played through all of Carrion Crown, played through half of Kingmaker, and I'm running Rise of the Rune Lords. I'm in the second book now, and I would say that generally there's chunks. There's the non-combat chunk, and there might be a combat or two thrown in there, but it'll be like a bar fight, or it'll be like a low-impact combat. And then generally this will lead to the combat chunk, and then there will be some social stuff, there will be some non-combat things thrown in. But generally, that's my experience, that you will move from chunk to chunk. And I would say I've never gone 2 sessions in a row with no combat, but I have had entire sessions go by without a single encounter. And those are refreshing, but I don't think I would be happy if that was a norm. That's just my playgroup style, though. We do like swinging the swords.
Yeah, I think there certainly could be more room for more social / non-combat rules in the game in general. There's always room for more. Ultimate Campaign had a lot of subsystems that did this very well, so not the core rulebook, but if you're interested in a lot of non-combat stuff, Ultimate Campaign's a good source for info like that. But at the same time, Pathfinder is still the fantasy adventure game, and so this is it's very much it's you know what to expect. It's quite literally on the cover with the swords and the magic and the dragon. So while you can have other styles of play in the game, and I've successfully had whole campaigns based off of not combat at all, it's still, Pathfinder is designed for this fantasy adventure, very pulpy feel to its play style, and so this might not be playing to its strengths. There are other game systems, such as the Fate system, or Spirit of the Century, or Lady Blackbird, that are fantastic with this social dynamics and improvisation and non-combat scenes. If you're looking for inspirations, either to play those as your main game or as for elements to steal and bring back into your Pathfinder games, that's more the direction I would send you in towards systems that are designed specifically towards those elements.
Now, there are a couple of Pathfinder Society scenarios, I believe starting with the Black Cross Matrimony in Season 4, that have the make friends and influencing people subsystem, where the entire point of the scenario was you just show up at a party or whatnot, usually a high-end social gathering, and you're just trying to influence people to the Pathfinder Society's cause for that season, and then usually fights break out. Black Cross Matrimony I found a little unbalanced because it was super social, and then there was a combat at the end that really felt tacked on. But other scenarios in Season 5, and I don't know if there's any in Season 6 yet, but they took that same system and they've used it a little bit more balanced. I know in Season 5 there is an early scenario, I'm looking up the title of it now, the Hell Knight's Feast, where is it? Yes, the Hell Knight's Feast, where kind of a murder mystery breaks out while you're trying to investigate people, and it's pretty cool. It uses that system very effectively, and so if you like a crunchy kind of social stuff, that's a really good way of going about it. If you like kind of freewheeling your social stuff, then you might find frustrating. but it's actually, for a crunchy system, there's a lot of looseness. It allows a lot of freedom to the players for how they socialize. So I would check out those scenarios just to see if you're just looking for an option. Now, the second half of his question, I'm going to pose to you, Stephen. He says, would the core rulebook benefit with equal amount of combat and social/non-combat rules?
There could definitely be an argument about that. I like both aspects of the game, and I think that every group has its own sort of balance of where they want it to be. I think most of our game really excels when we talk about taking down bad guys. That doesn't mean we couldn't come up with some better social networking rules or codify some of the ones that we've got sitting in other teams in a way that we sort of did with Ultimate Campaign. But I think if you take the whole breadth of what Pathfinder has to offer, we actually do have quite a bit of those systems for non-combat encounters. And based on what you want to do with that, I think you just need to find the system that works best for you. And if freeforming's it, well, that's easy. You can do that all by yourself. But we do have a good amount of support. It's not as codified in the core rulebook as kind of scattered out into various products, including Pathfinder Society. Would it benefit, though? That's a question. I don't think the ratio is right, but having more of those systems in the core rulebook would definitely help. Help out GMs who want to run games with a lot more social interaction than combat.
Actually, his question actually says non-combat encounters, and I was kind of reading that as social, but thinking back to Kingmaker, all of the kingdom building is non-combat encounters. It's got a different purpose besides fighting things.
I guess it's more, do you want those things to be strategic, or do you not want those things to be strategic? We definitely have a lot of systems where you can be a little bit more strategic in how you role play to get to an end result. And some people find those systems helpful and fun, and other people just want to freewheel it. But freewheeling, it's easy. You just freewheel it.
And you also have the social encounter cards that just got released recently, too.
Right.
Yes.
And that kind of sort of takes a variant of the chase mechanic and puts it where you can create sort of social encounters. And it's another game aid to help the players play a strategic game while you're role-playing with them. And I think it sort of shines when you do that. Just like you've got to embellish a bit sometimes with the chase deck. Describe the things that are going around it, but it's still, everybody knows the rules and everybody can sort of go down that track and play this sort of mini game while they're role-playing.
And a lot of what I heard the AP teams talking about Hell's Rebels sounds like it's also going to have a lot of focus on non-combat options.
Yeah. I mean, the Adventure Path team is always trying to find interesting ways to add that kind of element into adventures where it doesn't seem tacked on. But yeah, I think people will like the future adventure paths because they're going to have some great role-playing options, but still a lot of butt kicking too. We always try to hit that balance where we can get that nice middle ground where everybody's happy.
Speaking of happy, I think we're happy with this question. Now the next couple, Stephen, you won't really have much input on, but hey, if you think of something to say, feel free. But he's wondering if Param and I, this is Sam Buffin via our Facebook page, is wondering if Param and I are going to PaizoCon. We'll be recording the banquet this year. Yes. Yes and yes. Well, I will be going at least, and I will be recording. I'll bring my video equipment again. And I will try and make sure that the camera stays a little less shaky. I don't know what happened in the middle of the video there.
Oh, well, if you guys are going to the banquet, I won't be going to the banquet.
Oh.
No, I'm just kidding. I've got to go to the banquet.
I didn't
know. You can just stay for half of it because I'm not going to be able to make it this year.
Oh.
Someday, Param.
Sad.
Someday. Tom Gantz via the No Direction Facebook page asked, Ryan. Okay. I remember. Oh, this is at me being bad. I remember having heard something about KD Adventurous. Is this still a thing? It is kind of not a thing right now. May it become a thing? I hope. But as of right now, it's on hiatus.
Oh. So do you want to
I'm
just
sorry.
summarize what KD Adventurous was?
Okay, this is still something I really want to do, but there's some logistic things that have to be worked out long term before this can be a reality. But me and Ryan constantly worry about spoiling too much about adventures on the podcast. Every time we do, we get angry Facebook messages, and we're very sorry. We don't mean to ruin anybody's games. And at this point, if you've listened to the podcast, no, Rise of the Rune Lords is completely busted. Sorry, guys. Between me playing it and Ryan playing through it and geeking out about all the cool stuff, and then the card game came out, and then other things came out. That's we spoiled that to death, and we're sorry.
There's a lot of ways to get Rise of the Rune Lords spoiled for you.
Yeah. Okay, so the basic gist of it, we don't want to spoil cool adventures, but me and Ryan both read a lot of published adventures, and we do a lot of PFS. Ryan does more PFS than I do, but I read a lot of the published adventures, and I really geek out about it. And one of Pathfinder and Paizo's biggest strengths is the quality of their pre-written adventures, but it's a thing aspect of the game. It's one of their most important parts, and we're not allowed to talk about it. So we constantly feel handheld on that, and we always try to tease it when we are geeking out about it. So Adventurous was an idea that we would do a side podcast, not on a regular schedule, that we would just pick an adventure and then just like write on the label, hey, this is meant if you're considering running this, and then just go to town on it, not worry about spoilers. But then again, write on the label, this is a separate download. You can't accidentally listen to it. I guess if you download it on the master feed, you could accidentally download it, but it would be a separate thing. I hope that this becomes a thing. I still wish it to be a thing. I have just not been able to make it a thing. I need time and a co-host.
And we forgive you, Pam.
I'm sorry, guys.
Next question is from Reese Garland. This relates to something you were talking about earlier, Stephen. This is his first D20 game, and he has decided to roll an unarmed monk. So do we have any advice for playing his character successfully? You've rolled a monk in every edition of Dungeons & Dragons and Pathfinder. What are some of the ways that what are some of the successes you've had with it?
I think if you can maximize on your mobility, that leads for more dynamic fights and makes you be wherever you need to be. I would definitely say that. Always consider having a weapon in your back pocket, especially one that will help you with certain foes. Do unarmed stuff, and I think you're going to be happy with the unarmed stuff in Unchained, especially. But it's always good to have something in your back pocket. Those are my two pieces of advice.
And along the same lines, mobility for a monk is different from mobility for a barbarian. They both get fast movement, but barbarian can move up and then just stand there, and that's kind of his thing, whereas a monk should be using it to get around people, get into tactical positions. Yeah, you may always be tempted to get your flurry of blows in, but don't underestimate how much having a bonus 20, 30 feet to your move and being able to spend a key point getting that much more movement, like how much you can just get to exactly where you need to be in any encounter, set up flanks for the rogue, go back and defend the casters. Like, you could be wherever you need to be. Don't just stop somewhere and flurry until you get knocked out, because that's not the monk's exact strength.
Yeah. Maybe carry a potion, because you'll be out of range of the cleric.
Yeah. I've had a lot of fun with some society monks I've run, and my best advice, having not seen Unchained, because it sounds like Unchained is awesome, especially as far as the monk goes, to remember that the monk is probably, if you build him right and take the right archetypes and feats, the best combat maneuver machine in the game. And having, just keeping a powerful enemy tripped, grappled, disarmed, dancing, dirty tricked, or whatever is so valuable to your party, and just pulling that off is so satisfying, especially when you can flurry of trip.
That's a very good point.
And there's also, now that the brawler's there, you can really play up the flavor of the monk. Because if you want to be Muhammad Ali, you can be a brawler. But if you want to be Bruce Lee, if you want like really to bring out the martial arts side of it, that's why you're choosing a monk.
And you need to get a soundboard for your phone so you can wata on command. And lastly, Eric Hawley via our Facebook page has asked us 3 questions. That's cheating, Eric, but not really. Ask all the questions you want, guys. I have 3 questions I was hoping to give advice on. Number 1, my first experience in gaming was the red box. That was 27 years ago, and all that time I've only gotten to game for a total of 6 years. How can I find games and hopefully a gaming group to play with? We'll start with this one. Okay, you've got 2 options. 2 options. You can find real people in meat space to game with, and the best ways to do that vary depending on where you are. If you're in a big city, this should be easy. Go to your friendly local gaming stores, start asking around. I usually find that the game store guys like to tell you about groups available because people who play games spend more money, or at least that's our theory at my store. And so that's a good thing. That's a good place. Another place to check is your local library. A lot of gaming groups organize in libraries nowadays because they have play space, they have quiet, and the librarians have a very high percentage of librarians that like D&D. So you can usually find
Pathfinder.
Places like that. Yes. Sorry. The red box part threw me. But yes. So in my local area, in all 3 of the public libraries I can think of, they both have multiple gaming groups that meet there. And usually you can do that for completely free. They'll let you use the room as long as, there's no other one using it, and it's a nice environment. And some libraries even have role-playing books on the shelves. And that's another great place to do it. Now, if you're wanting to meet online, then you can go to the Paizo boards and find people there. You can also find people on Ian World and other RPG world, another RPG-focused blogs. There's usually looking for game area, and usually you can organize an online game a lot easier if you're in a very not very densely populated area than trying to find a gaming group. And my final bit of advice is to go onto Paizo's website and find out where your local society games are taking place. Because you can play some society, get to know people, get to know the game a lot better, and that's also a great way to make connections with other gamers for non-society groups. Because I recruited almost every one of my permanent weekly game players from society games. Like, that's usually where I scout out the kind of players I want to play with, invite them back to the house and game in a campaign that is permanent, things like that. Usually it's a great way to find people you get along with, as well as a great way to get familiar with the system and get exposed to a variety of different play styles and approaches to the game.
Yeah, if you didn't mention Pathfinder Society, I was definitely going to throw that in and give you a little for shame. But no, you did.
Yeah, definitely. I just wanted to save it for last because there's the 2 traditional answers, and then there's the easy answer. Eric's
a lot of society enthusiasts get a little iffy about saying go to Pathfinder Society, find a group, and then kind of leave Pathfinder Society. But it's actually a valuable way of finding a gaming group. It lets you play with a variety of players, find people that you just connect with on a social level, and then see if you can make your schedules work and play in a regular game. Pathfinder Society will always be there if you've just got a free weekend here and there, or if you can't commit to a regular group. But if you can, and that's what you're looking for, Society is a great avenue to find it.
And there's even online Society as well, which is a great way to play Society. I think I've played more. I'm getting close to playing more online societies besides conventions than I have in meat space societies, just because it's so easy to find an online Pathfinder Society game anymore. But yeah, and Ryan, and as Ryan says, you don't have to do one or the other. You can still keep showing up for Society weekends and do it like we in game on your normal weekdays, depending on how much your tolerance and for role playing and time available is, of course.
Stephen, any insight?
No, I mean, I agree with everything you guys said.
Oh,
Back in the day, I was part of the RPGA, and man, I've met a lot of great friends through organized play programs over the years, and and folks that I still love to game with to this day. So, yeah, Pathfinder Society is a great way to find not only a game or just to play, but maybe your new best friend.
Eric's second part of the question, or second question, I am hoping to attend my first con this year sometime, but have no clue where to begin. Do you have any recommendation as to which cons would be a good one for a con noob? And do you have any tips on what I should do to prepare? What do I need to carry with me at the con? And just to have in my room, what things do I need to plan for that are not obvious? Note, I live in northwestern Arkansas area, and my budget is not very large. Now, I'm trying to do the mental gymnastics of Arkansas to Indiana.
if you don't know, I don't know.
But okay, you've got two choices.
Oof.
There's usually almost always going to be some form of small local convention in your state somewhere, especially during the summer, because we're coming up on what we call con season. So like the very end of spring and throughout summer, you're going to see a lot of geek conventions of various sorts. Going to a smaller convention is a lot easier and a lot less overwhelming than going to the bigger cons. And depending on your small convention, they can still be very rewarding experiences and having fun. I've loved going to some of the small cons in my area here to get in some gaming and meet people. And that's the other advantage of a small con is in your area. It's in your area, and you wanted to meet gamers. So now you're meeting gamers in your area, dressed as elves, but in your area. Not that there's anything wrong with dressing as elves, especially at these cons. Those outfits are awesome.
Elves have a great fashion sense.
Yes, yes. But it's going to lack the wow factor of going to a national con. Now, I almost want to say that your first con should be an UberCon. I think that just the experience of understanding just how large a community where you're really dealing with, and the sheer breadth of flavors and personality types that are available here of men and women of all types of gaming, book yourself a Gen Con and go, or an Origins or a Dragon Con. Well, Dragon Con would be very far away from you, but or a Penny Arcade Expo, though getting tickets for that's almost impossible. Do the big UberCon, because then you get to have that, holy crap, there's 50,000 nerds here with me, and every type of game ever imaginable, and oh my goodness, look at this hall filled with everything I can even think about. Because if you can't get inspired on how to game at a Gen Con, you hang up your hat.
Jeez, Param, you are inviting him into chaos.
Oh, it's a big.
I just checked. Arkansas is about 8 hours away from Indianapolis, and he said he's
short drive.
Arkansas. So yeah, it might even be a little bit less than that. But oh my goodness, starting with Gen Con. I mean, it's hard to just grasp the geography of Gen Con, like the size of it, and like managing your schedule. Like if you go to PaizoCon, there's a few thousand people there, and it's great, and you'll still only be able to do half of everything, maybe more than that if you've got friendly podcasters that are recording some of the seminars you can't go to. But Gen Con, there's no way you can even get like a percentage of that con experience in. It could be so overwhelming. It's great, but as a first con, I'm terrified for Eric.
Now, do be prepared. You mentioned all kinds of stuff, and honestly, that's almost too large of a question to tackle. We've devoted whole segments of the show to some of this very subject. I'm preparing to go to the con, and it might be time for us to do that again very shortly with PaizoCon and Gen Con on the horizon. But some of the things that are really obvious are don't pack as much as you think you need to pack. You don't need your game collection in the trunk because you're not going to want to lug that with you, and you really don't want like the most unfortunate thing of losing all your game stuff in one big go. So if you're going to go and play some Pathfinder, you might want to bring the core rule book and your characters, or the applicable books that you're going to use, but you really don't want to bring the core rule book, Ultimate Combat, Ultimate Magic, Advanced Player's Guide, yada 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 yada, to the con, because you don't want to lug that around. Try to pack as light as possible, but pack plenty of changes of clothing, at least 1.5 sets of clothing times the number of days you're going to be there, because you're going to want to change
2 pairs of socks per day.
2 pairs of socks per day. I've always done 2 extra pairs of socks, so you have more sock than I have.
Socks are great for insulation in your baggage, and you want to stay comfortable.
Pack some snacks with you that won't spoil, because con food's expensive, and you're going to get hungry. Now there's rules against bringing the snacks onto the con floor, but having a set of snacks in your room so that you don't have to pay the room service price is great, and as well as just having something is going to be there and you don't have to go get. Wear comfortable shoes and not brand new ones. So don't buy your brand new pair of shoes that you think are going to be comfy right before the con. Your feet will hate you for that. Think of it like you're running a marathon for 4 days.
I recommend Skechers.
Oh, Skechers? Nice.
Yeah, they got built-in memory foam soles.
I like Dr. Scholl's, but
yeah, good shoes and a good attitude, and you'll be fine.
Take care of yourself too. Make sure you get a shower every day. Make sure you get at least a few hours of sleep every day. Don't starve yourself, because you're going to really regret that when you're thinking more about how hungry you are rather than the really awesome game you're playing at the table. Some of the more obvious stuff like that. And finally, make absolutely sure that you don't overbook yourself your first time, because it's way too easy to overestimate what your capabilities are, or to think that booking games back to back so you can get them in is great, and then you realize that, well, this book's in Hall A and that book, or this game's in Hall A and that game's in Hall G, and oh, that's 5 city blocks away. You can't make that in 5 minutes.
Even with some of your con-going experience advice?
Yeah, good shoes, good attitude, stay hydrated. Wherever possible, try not to eat a bunch of junk. It's amazing how that stuff will kind of wear you down. Get a decent amount of sleep. If you're hungover, don't complain about it. It's all about what you want to bring into it, and as long as you don't have unreasonable expectations and are still ready to be wowed, I think you'll have a great time at whatever convention you go to. The gaming communities, all aspects of it, are filled with a bunch of wonderful people who like to come together and share their love of gaming, and I always have fun at cons.
If you're going alone, I think the bring a good attitude advice is really good, because try and find like a con buddy your first day there. Just be sociable, see who's gaming. If you get in a pickup game, see if you can meet up with them. Don't harass somebody if there's no connection there. But it's fun to have someone that at the end of the day you could just talk about everything you saw, see what they experienced that you might have missed, and just kind of having someone that you can just be with. I find that makes a con experience more pleasant, and that's as someone that's gone to a lot of cons by myself. The third part of his question, or his third question, he has some of the Pathfinder pawn boxes, was thinking of picking up more. He needs storage options for pawns that is efficient, cost-effective, easy to use. Suggestions. Param, I believe we've talked about this in the past, but it always bears repeating. How do you store your miniatures and your pawns?
Okay, very differently from each other. For my pawns, what I found that works best for me is I use really thick 3-ring binders, because this is going to be a lot of cardboard, and I buy the heavy-duty page sheets that you can get at Office Supply Store, where you put a page of thing. You can slip a page into a sheet of plastic and it holds it and will go into a 3-ring binder. The heavy duty ones are good enough that you can actually take the sheet of pawns with not punching them out, or punching them out and then putting them back in place, and you can slide that into the sheet, and then you can put the sheet in the 3-ring binders, and then of course label it on the spine, and that way You know, they're right there. You can easily leaf through them to find the monsters you want just at a glance, and then when you need them, you just pull the sheet out, punch, 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 put the sheet back in.
Now, I store my pawns in two different ways. Tina organized the main bestiary box one into a double thick card box. So, like if you were collecting baseball cards, and she's lined them up in rows, and then she's made custom designer dividers out of cardboard because Tina is incredibly handy and very organized. For the rest of them, I've actually just kept them on the sprue in the box. I mean, it's a really well-packed box, and other than my shelf recently collapsing because I've got about 6 pawn boxes putting a lot of pressure on it, it keeps it well organized. And this is from someone that does know what monster is in Bestiary 2, what monster is in Bestiary 3, although if you're GMing and you're running a canned adventure, it will tell you in the book. So it's fairly easy to just say, like, okay, you know the box, you know you've got the list of what's in the box on the back. You might want to make a photocopy of that so that you don't have to flip the box over. Although, yeah, you know what, flip it over, and then you can just use the front cover to hold it so that you've got the list of the contents on the back. And it's fairly easy to reference, and once you're done, you just put it back in. They mostly will sit in the space that they were provided. Sometimes they'll pop loose, but for the most part, anything I've popped out of the sprue goes back in no problem.
And if you are using the boxes, the original boxes, especially the Bestiary 1, Bestiary 2, Bestiary 3, the boxes, I have to assume this was done on purpose. We've talked about this before, are exactly the right thickness and size that you can put all the pawns in and then put the Bestiary in the front of it and close it in the box with the pawns.
Stephen, was that done on purpose?
If it was, I didn't know about it. I wouldn't be surprised if that were the case, but it also may just be a happy accident. It's pretty cool.
If it was on purpose, who do we have to thank, do you think?
It would be somebody in the art department. So my guess is Sarah would know if that were the case, even though I'm not quite sure who up in that department actually designed the boxes.
Well, just in case, next time you see Sarah, just tell her she's a genius.
Okay. Oh, she'll love that. She'll go, yeah, I know, and she'll, rattle
Move
on
on, not question it.
Right? She's like, yeah, of course.
Well, that does it for our questions. So we will be, unless Param, did I miss anything from chat?
I don't think so.
All right, then we will be right back to wrap things up right after this. Stephen, you did very well.
Oh,
Thank
good.
you very much, Stephen, for sticking around. That was awesome.
Oh, my pleasure.
All right.
So we're doing the wrap-ups and shout-outs now. If there's anything you want to shout out to, feel free. We'll give you a space.
Yeah, no, I'm cool. I think I shouted out everything I wanted to shout out, but and I think I'm going to log out. But thanks, you guys. I had a really great time.
Cool.
Thank you very much.
And we'll see you at PaizoCon.
Sounds great. Take care.
Take care. Okay, he's gone. Param, I'm just going to divulge this to you. I actually get nervous when our guests stay after the interview.
You do?
I do. Well, it throws me off. It's like, oh no, they're staying. Oh.
I love it. I love it when we have a fresh perspective on things.
Yeah, no, Stephen was great. It's just nervous.
Okay, so we've got three things for the shout outs.
Yeah. These are my things. If you want to add something, go ahead.
Trying to think real quick what I would want to shout out to, but I ain't got nothing handy.
Okay. Then
there's a really cool book I'm reading, but I'll do that for a Read Magic segment.
Okay, cool. Is it a Pathfinder book?
Yeah. It's It's the Kaiju book that Rat Publishing put out.
Kaiju book. All right, I believe you.
It's got Kaiju.
Yeah.
And a giant robot. So I'm sorry.
Fun.
Yeah, fun. Look forward to that sometime in the future, guys. Okay, so we're gonna do Okay, got it.
All right, you ready?
Ready.
3, 2, 1. Thank you for joining us for episode 105 of No Direction, the Pathfinder News, Reviews, and Interviews podcast. Before we go, just want to bring your attention to some things that we thought were cool and might be of interest to our Pathfinder loyalists. First one, it's very much me-focused. The new edition of the adventure card game will be Wrath of the Righteous. And to my surprise, one of the scenarios in the Wrath of the Righteous adventure card game will be Elven Entanglement.
Woohoo!
Not just in name alone, they've actually got a couple of NPCs that I designed. So the Uprooters were a faction that I created for that scenario, and this is the first time, I think, that the Uprooters have been mentioned in some capacity outside of Elven Entanglement. But Cecilia, the Uprooter, the de facto leader, when you meet her, as well as a satyr named Vince, who just looks a little off, even by satyr standards. Obviously, I don't want to spoil the Elven Entanglement to anyone that's still interested in running it or playing in it. But yeah, no, this was cool. I got an email from John Compton this morning saying, like, hey, did you happen to read the Paizo blog yesterday? And so I followed the link, and cool.
That's neat. That's cool.
There's allusions to an encounter that's in the Elven Entanglement scenario that I am looking forward to that particular monster making it into the game. Param, you'll probably remember this. It's about halfway through.
Okay. What am I remembering?
A particular misfit monster that's in the scenario.
Oh, yeah. No spoilers, no spoilers.
Nope, yeah, no, that's as much as I'm going to say.
I like that.
It's funny because we've seen a lot of times when there's these adaptation products, they can't use the names of the actual monsters, and so it's funny seeing the pseudonym they gave this particular monster. I actually like it quite a bit.
Now, is it obvious this time? I often get confused sometimes when they do these, because like what is the corruption demon? And then like wait what? Yeah. Oh, that's a blah.
Yeah, aren't most demons corrupt in some way?
Right. I mean, totally super corrupt.
Mm-hmm. Yes, if you are familiar with this monster, then if I were to say the pseudonym they gave it, you would know exactly what that monster is.
Okay,
which is why I'm not mentioning the pseudonym, but anyone that's curious, you can click on the Elven Entanglement. So there's two scenarios. The scenario cards are two-sided. One of them is kind of sepia tone, one of them is full color. Click on the full color one, and you'll be able to find what monster I'm referring to. And actually, I'm going to point out there's two pieces of original art on these cards. So Vince is as he appeared in the scenario, but Cecilia has never been depicted in art. The Uprooter's armor has never been depicted in art. This is cool. This was an amazing surprise for me this morning.
Excellent. I like it.
And speaking of surprises, the other day I got my Reaper Bones 2 Kickstarter rewards, which included Kanjira. Now, Kanjira is known as the World Breaker. Reaper can call it whatever they want. This is going to be my Tarrasque. I believe that was the intent, and like we were saying, you can't use certain names when you're adapting things, so use Kanjira to the Reaper folks. But we all know what this is. So I was bragging about having a Tarrasque to Matt, who, he went in half with the Kickstarter for me, so it's also half his. But I was just taunting it because I'm his GM now. And anytime I want, there can be a Tarrasque.
I'm jealous. I couldn't get in on the Reaper 2 because it just conflicted with other cool things that also released at the same time. So I'm jealous that you're getting a Crass miniature because I had to make mine.
Well, I have to build mine, which actually is where Dave Gross comes in.
Oh!
Because in that thread on Facebook, Dave Gross kind of issued a challenge. He said that he is also getting the Tarrasque. He actually just got it today, I believe. And he wants to see if by Gen Con, he and I can both have our Tarrasque miniatures done, or our Kanjira, have those miniatures done, and then we're kind of compare. I am extending this challenge to any of our listeners. If you also got Kanjira from Reaper Bones 2, feel free to join us. See if by Gen Con you can have this miniature built, painted, show it off, talk about your design choices. We may make a blog about it, or if you can share posts with your pictures of your Kenjira on our Facebook. You know what? Yes, I can make a Facebook group called the Dave Gross Kenjira Invitational. And it will be open for anyone to post pictures of their Kenjira in whatever stage of completion. This will not actually be any kind of a tournament, just kind of like a gentle person's bet. We're all going to see how Tarrasque we can get.
Well, since, you know, it's going to be at a con, and you're going to see these things...
Oh, no.
Might as well.
Deadline. I'm not actually going to be packing this guy in a suitcase.
Oh, I was thinking, like, we could bring all the Tarrasques together at Gen Con and have a 6-way Tarrasque smackdown.
Oh, man, a Tarrasque Battle Royal. That's something I could do at PaizoCon, but then I've got only a couple of months to actually get it done.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, that's the question. Something to think about, guys. Something to think about. And finally, we want to put on our bi-weekly reminder that PaizoCon 2015 is still happening. It's not like they canceled it. But no, seriously. PaizoCon, it's coming up faster than you think. It's next month, May 22nd through the 25th at the DoubleTree Inn by Hilton Hotel at the Seattle Airport.
Yeah, if you go to the airport, if you fly into Seattle, then you could technically walk to the DoubleTree by Hilton. It'll be a bit of a walk, but it'll be a cheap cab ride. Mm-hmm. And that's Monday the 22nd, that's May 22nd to Monday the 25th. So it's a 4-day convention. It runs from Friday to Mondays, which this is the first time it's a 4-day convention. It's the first time PaizoCon's extended to a Monday. So if you're booking your time off, make sure to include that Monday in the time off that you get. Or you can go for a 3-day con. I mean, that's at your leisure. But if you intend to be there for the full con, remember the 25th is a Monday. It's not a Thursday to Sunday convention.
I always book the Mondays off on a con anyway because there's no way on earth I'm going to survive work.
All right, Param, I believe that does it.
Yep, that's it for episode 105.
Once again, thank you to Stephen Stephen. Once again, thank you to Stephen Radney-MacFarland for joining us for a great interview and sticking around for the No Question segment. Thank you for everyone that joined us live. And until next time, I'm Ryan Costello.
And I'm Jefferson J. Thacker, also known as Param.
And if you want to find the path, you need no direction.